The next episode of Nerd, Flicks, and Chill will start in
3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, this is Nick,
This is Carrie.
and we are Nerd, Flicks, and Chill, and tonight's episode is really just going to be kind of a Game of Thrones Season 6 wrap-up. We're going to go over some additional items from Episode 10, The Winds of Winter, and then go back through the season and just kind of talk about some of our high points, some of our low points, maybe even get into some speculation for next season. Just going to have kind of a nice free-flowing conversation since we don't have an episode to recap. As the long night for us Game of Thrones fans begins.
It's going to be excruciating. It's already excruciating. I am already lamenting this coming Sunday night because I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
Well, there is that lovely little show called Preacher that's out there too.
You know, I do need to catch up on it because I still have only seen the first 2 episodes. So I have some catching up to do this weekend. And I think that may be my new Sunday night thing. Because it's really good.
It really is. And, you know, this is starting to become kind of that dead time on the TV calendar. But we do have some movie stuff that we're going to be able to talk about throughout the remainder of the summer. So that'll be fun.
Yes. Sorry, I was yawning. I was yawning.
Nice. Are we able to put you to sleep already?
Yeah, you're keeping me awake. Keep it down. Shush.
Maybe when the fall comes around, we can hate watch The Walking Dead. That would be fun.
That would be good. Well, because the last episode of this last season really left a huge cliffhanger. So I'm kind of interested to see who's getting their brains bashed in.
Yeah.
You don't care?
I read an article that they filmed like 11 different death scenes, and I was like, that's just gimmicky as shit. It's just really piss poor. Like, they hadn't for themselves determined yet who it was who was going to get killed.
Really?
Yeah, that to me is bad storytelling.
Or is it just red herring? They're just throwing out fish left and right so that I'll bet you they know, but to throw off people who are on set or people who are internet savvy or whatever, that there's all different pathways that, you know, are going to lead you down dead ends. So maybe that's why.
I did hear that AMC threatened a lawsuit against a spoiler website.
Really?
Yeah.
But that scene happens in the books or in the graphic novel. Like, people that are up on the graphic novel or that have read the internet, like myself, I haven't read the graphic novel, like, know who it is from that scene.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
that's really, so are they going to then sue anybody who's read the graphic novel too?
I don't know. Fuck that show.
Anyway, yeah, this is Game of Thrones discussion. We
what are
just
we talking
derailed
about here?
ourselves.
So I did watch episode 10, The Winds of Winter, again a little while ago. And a few things jumped out at me this time that I didn't necessarily catch the first time around. One of the first things, and we're going to go kind of in a random order, but when Arya kills Walder Frey after she pulls the Mrs. Lovett meat pie bit.
Which, by the way, I know in our recap episode, I said that I was looking to see if there was something that was in there, and I didn't see anything. Oh, there's something in there. There is, well, totally something in there. It looks like a nasty toe.
Yeah, it's some
That's
kind
in
of like
there.
dead nail like Guy Fieri has on his hand.
Oh, gross. Really?
Yeah.
Ew, I haven't seen that. I have not paid nearly enough attention to his hands as you have, apparently. Wow. I wasn't aware that you were that into it. Um
That
no,
was one of our
there's
Twitter followers, right, that noticed that? That
yeah,
pointed that out to us?
one of our Twitter followers corrected me and told me to go back and look at it, and sure enough I did. Uh it's disgusting, and so if you go to our Twitter Nerdflix Chill, you will see that I tweeted out the picture of there's a really nasty toe or finger or some kind of finger nail appendage with a nail on it. Oh, it's really gross. Anyway,
I
but
mean, I admire Arya's skills as a baker. That meat pie, aside from having people in it, actually looked pretty good.
well, I mean, she spent a lot of time traveling with hot pie for a
That is
while.
true. That
I'm
is
sure
true.
she learned how to make a lovely flaky crust.
And that, I mean, had there not been people in it, I might have been inclined to eat it.
I do appreciate a good meat pie.
But the thing about that scene that I wanted to touch on is a really great callback to season two. Um, when you see Arya as this, peasant girl who's serving Walder Frey his meat pie, she keeps referring to him as my lord. My lord, my lord, my lord. In season two, she has that scene with Tywin, and Tywin's basically giving her like a word of advice that if she wants to pass herself off as a peasant girl, she would say my lord, because when she says my lord, she sounds too highborn, and that was a clue that kind of gave away Arya's identity.
Oh, nice. Good catch by you and good I guess continuity or yeah, with the show that they kept that detail in there.
There's a lot of these little details that are always kind of calling back to stuff that happened in previous seasons, and that
Well,
happened a lot, particularly this year. I noticed.
it really did, especially with the Red Wedding being avenged, that all of the people who were killed that orchestrated or participated in the Red Wedding were each killed in ways of the Starks that were killed in the Red Wedding.
Yeah, it very much felt like this season as a whole served as like the end of the second act of this story. If the
Yeah.
Red Wedding was the end of the first act, this was the end of the second act.
Oh man, and we're getting ready to go into the third.
And we keep getting these callbacks to all these characters. I mean, we even went back and were able to see Edmure and the Blackfish and get some resolutions to their characters, except for Edmure, who's still in jail. We heard a lot about, Catelyn Stark this year, too. So lots of different callbacks to those previous seasons. Lots of dialogue callbacks, too. I noticed one in the finale where Benjen says that he fights for the side of the living and he'll do what he can for as long as he can. Those are all callbacks to Jon Snow lines.
Yeah, there was something that what was it, the dialogue between Jon Snow and Sansa when they're standing on the ramparts and they're watching Melisandre ride away, that he says something about how we have too many enemies right now. Um, I think you sent it to me. Uh, that what Jon said to Sansa is almost exactly something that Ned said back in season one.
Yeah, he said it to Arya.
Right.
Ned had said something like, "We were, when they went to King's Landing." Ned said something to Arya to the extent of, "We can't be fighting wars among ourselves." Same thing
Yep.
that Jon said to Sansa in that scene.
Yep.
And this is a recurring theme throughout the season. There's a lot of that stuff with Jon. There was the whole thing where um, Jon last season said to Ollie, "Keep your shield up, or I'll ring your head like a bell." We
Yep.
heard a callback to that in Bran's first Winterfell flashback. So I mean, just those dialogue callbacks are everywhere. I even looked at the scenes where Jon was proclaimed King of the North and when Robb was proclaimed King of the North, and there's a lot of similarity in those scenes too.
Like what?
When you go back and you watch when Robb was proclaimed King of the North, it's actually a very sweet scene in retrospect, because Theon was one of the people who bends a knee and says to Robb, "Am I your brother?" And Robb says, "Now and always," and we all know how that turned out. But as everybody is kneeling in front of Robb, he kind of turns and looks over at Catelyn in the same way that Jon turns and looks at Sansa I mean, they're structurally very similar scenes the way they're laid out.
Very cool.
Let's hope it works out differently for John.
And Sansa.
And so that's true.
So, what else did you notice on your second or third or fourth viewing?
I tried to hear John's name, but
Okay, there's a lot of speculation. Because Miguel Sapochnik himself even said that if you turn up your speakers enough, that you might be able to hear something.
tried it,
And
didn't.
didn't. Nothing. Is
No,
it just
nothing.
dead air? Yeah.
No, I mean, what I was kind of wondering about that
Hmm.
is I wonder if that name is in the script. Like, does the actor have the name and they're just in post production muffling it out, or is it meant to be left as an unknown?
I don't know. I don't know. There's apparently some people that believe that they have been able to um, figure out what the name is, although uh, I'm not really buying it. The name and oh gosh, what's the name? I sent it to you.
I've heard two. I've heard Jaharis, I've heard Jakaris, I've heard Ares, I've heard Aemon,
Well, and I'm
Aegon.
sticking with it because when you see her mouth move, her lips are not forming the sound of J.
No, they're definitely
Even a
not.
soft J, it's not it's she's her lips are moving as if it's some kind of a vowel sound.
The other thing I was thinking, because to me it sounds like I mean, it almost sounds like Aries, but that would not make any sense at all.
Hmm.
So I'm not 100% sure there. I've heard some people say that she actually did say John, but they just muffled it out so that way we could get the reveal
No.
in the transition scene, and that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. It
No,
also
because
doesn't make sense that Lyanna Mormont or not Lyanna Mormont, Lyanna Stark would name her baby John. John is a name that's important to Ned, not to Lyanna.
yeah, and again, her mouth is not forming that kind of a sound of a J at all.
The the other thing I was thinking about this scene is that we do find out the confirmed Rhaegar and Lyanna are Jon Snow's parents.
Hmm.
What we don't get kind of rounded off in this whole thing is the fact that maybe Rhaegar and Lyanna were in love, maybe they were married. Because if you're an audience member right now, you still have it as Jon basically being a product of the abduction and rape of Lyanna Stark by Rhaegar Targaryen.
But even then, from what I've seen too, there are a lot of people who are saying, well, then who's his father? I mean, people from the books, people that have read the books and people that have read up on the lore where this has originated from in the books know the R plus L equals J thing, and that's the equation. But people that have just watched the show don't know who Rhaegar is. I mean, there's been little, if any, mention of him. So they don't know the scene, they don't know what set it up, they don't know what led to this. All
Oh,
they know.
I disagree completely. I think there's been tons of talk of Rhaegar Targaryen. We had the whole scene in the crypts
Yeah, but how many
where,
seasons but from how many seasons ago is that? Somebody that just
well,
casually
that
watches the
was
show is not going to remember that.
that was
Before
last
I
season.
it's still something that that's just an empty name that gets thrown out. Nobody's going to remember that. People that are just casual watchers of the show aren't going to remember that. It's
The
different.
Barristan cellmate, Barristan's death episode, he spends a lot of time offering a completely different view that we hear on Rhaegar Targaryen from everybody over in Westeros. He talks about how Rhaegar loved to sing and how he would make money and give it to the minstrel down the streets. How Rhaegar,
I'm
he
still
hated killing.
I'm still sticking with it because I know myself. as a casual, what used to be a casual watcher of the show, that if you just throw names out there, I don't have any association with it. If
I don't
you
know.
give me a name and a face and put it together that way, I'm going to remember it. But if you throw out a name a couple seasons ago and then you randomly say another weird name, I'm not going to have that connection. I'm not going to remember it.
I think you've heard just as many references to Rhaegar Targaryen as you have Lyanna Stark.
Well, I even think too that there are people that are casual watchers of the show that didn't know, like, who's this? What? I mean, all I can remember is that when I first started watching the show, there are so many characters and there are so many names, and it's a blur. It took me so long, and even now I forget some of the names because there are so many, and so many characters have like three names. It's like there's Peter Baelish, it's Littlefinger, it's they each have like two to three names apiece.
Sure.
So for me, who's somebody who has a hard time with names to begin with, there are people that I work with that I can't even remember what their names are. So with something like this, when it is a sensory overload of tons of names and locations, and they're not common tongue names for us, for somebody like me, it doesn't stick. Like I have to have that visual association with it and repetitively for it to stick with me. And if you have somebody that only watches the episode once, they only watch it when it airs, and they're not listening to podcasts, they're not listening to YouTube, they're not reading Reddit, they haven't read the books, and they don't watch the episode more than once, that's not going to stick. They're not going to remember that. Some people might, but I think a vast majority of people don't. And like for example, I'm going to use something that you and I had talked about before, and we even mentioned on our podcast here, where you and I were talking about the Reigns of Castamere. That's been mentioned on the show. It's been played on the show multiple times. But yet you have somebody that says, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is that?
But
You know what I
that's
mean?
but that's a little bit different because
No, it's not.
the Reigns of Castamere was only really referenced two or three times. The music has always been there, but the actual, story behind it was only, I think, mentioned by Cersei one time to Marjorie. With Rhaegar and Lyanna, that's the impetus for the entire story, and that's fed to us right away, like from the very first episode of season one.
Yeah, but it's not drilled into your head. It's not constantly in there. Like you don't see with Lyanna, yes, because you see her statue and they talk about her a couple times. But Rhaegar, no. You don't see him. You don't see anything of him. It would not have stuck with me until I became more than just a casual viewer. There were things that even now I go back and reference things like, oh, I don't remember that happening. Oh, yeah, that was in season two. Oh, yeah, I totally didn't even remember that. Or I don't even remember that person being referenced. Like I can go back and watch earlier seasons and I pick up on things that I missed from before. And names for me are a huge one. A name to me will just go in one ear and right out the other. If there's nothing, a scene or anything of significance that happens, um, like for example, I remember you and I were having a conversation, and see, I can't even think of the guy's name right now. And he's been in the show plenty of times, and he was somebody that was on Arya's list, and Arya even killed him. And I was like, I don't even know who that is. Meryn Trant.
Maren Trant, yeah.
Yeah. Because there was one point you had said something about him, and I'm like, I don't even know who that is. Because there needs to be that connection. There needs to be that repetitiveness, or else it does for the casual viewer. It's not going to stick.
I don't know.
So
I
so
still think he's had.
there are people that don't know who Jon Snow's father is because I've seen articles on it. Oh, the big mystery now is who's the father.
Well, no, that's really not even it anymore because HBO put the kibosh on that today. They told you who John's father was today.
They did, but then also on that same infographic, it says that Rhaegar abducted Lyanna as well. on the exact same infographic, and you'll see there's a dotted line that goes between the two of them, and it says it's because he kidnapped her. So look at your infographic.
Right, but it still says who his father is.
Correct. But my point again being that the
But
cast
that was my
doesn't get that.
But that was my point originally, that we don't get that extra part of it. That's the piece of information that we don't have. We know who his father is, we know who his mother is, but we don't know the nature of their relationship.
But that's not the point that I was making.
I forgot what you were talking about at this point. But yeah, HBO put out this giant infographic that, in my opinion, this whole thing only exists to show you who John's parents are, and that's about it. I don't really understand the value of it outside of that.
I can't look at it. I look at it and it makes me go cross-eyed.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre thing. But I do wonder, since we are talking about Rhaegar Targaryen, I do wonder if we are going to ever see him in a flashback. I always wanted to see the Tower of Joy flashback done on screen, but always a little bit reluctant, just because I like the idea of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen kind of being almost mythical and never actually seeing them on the show. But now that we've seen Lyanna, I feel like that has been broken, and we should now see Rhaegar probably.
I want to see the tournament.
The tournament at Harrenhal, that would be pretty cool. Night of the
think
Laughing Tree would be cool too.
I think that's going to be incredibly important if we are going to then get the entire picture, and whether or not as to what their connection or their relationship is. Did he kidnap her? Did she go of her own free will? Were they in love? I think we are going to need to see that.
My question is, even if Jon is the child of Lyanna and Rhaegar, which he is, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean for the show? What is the practical value of that information?
I mean, I guess it means that he is the rightful heir to the throne, I would guess.
Would they have to be married for that? Like, if they were married, if all else is equal, and Rhaegar and Lyanna were married, and Jon's their son, Jon then would have a claim on the throne.
Right.
Now, as a bastard, or at least his claim would be stronger than Daenerys.
I don't know. I don't know if well, no, it would, because isn't that the whole reason why Robert or why Cersei was making sure that all of Robert's bastards were killed? So they couldn't have a claim to the throne?
Well, yeah, I think that was more of a Joffrey move than a Cersei move, though.
Well, a Lannister move. Let me just blanket it. Whoever's it was. I mean, but that would tell me that yes, a bastard would have a claim to the throne, or else, and who cares how many bastards he has?
Yeah, I mean, and the other part of it too is, like, we get so caught up in who Jon's parents are, but I think the more important fact was that he is a Stark basic on the basis of being raised by Ned Stark. Now, I just don't really understand what the value of that information is. Like, I think it's cool and I loved seeing it, but I don't know the value that it has.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know what's going to be coming down for season 7. I don't know. I guess it says that he's got royal blood, that he is half of the dragon, I guess.
Let's see. A couple of other things here. We were talking about in our last episode, since we're talking about Jon Snow and the Tower of Joy, we talked about that theory that we had heard on another podcast where they were talking about how Dawn, the famous sword Dawn, could be, Lightbringer being the sword, and or it could fulfill the Azor Ahai prophecy of, being born under a bleeding star, because that sword is made of a meteor and it was covered in blood, so in effect, it's a bleeding star. I thought it would be cool if this sword comes back into play at some point. And I think it's an opportunity for the show to do something different than the books, because in the books, Ned Stark returns that sword to its ancestral home. But in the show, they don't necessarily have to do that. I suppose they could. But I was thinking to myself, I would really like to see Jon wield that sword Dawn, and in return, he would give Longclaw back to House Mormont.
But is that a Valyrian steel sword?
Dawn is not.
Well, then no. Because that's going to do jack shit against the White Walkers.
Yeah, that's true. Although, who knows? We've never seen Dawn with White Walkers. We don't know.
Is that a chance you want to take?
No, not really.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But no, that was something that I mentioned in our last episode that because I didn't know about the thing in the books where Ned took it back. And I said, I noticed that Ned had it and they made kind of a point to show it at the foot of the bed. My thought was, maybe he still had that sword and it's stashed there in Winterfell somewhere. Now that they have Winterfell back, now that Jon is going to be presumably staying in his parents' older room, maybe he starts going through some stuff and he comes across it and he finds it.
They just left it in like an old Footlocker somewhere.
Well, Ned didn't exactly completely move out of Winterfell, and I assume some of their belongings are still there.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see Dawn turn up again at some point in the show. Another thing that jumped out at me is when I went back and I rewatched the beginning portion where we have all that stuff going down in King's Landing. We referenced Tommen's lion necklace
Yeah.
that he was wearing.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering about that, and I kind of mentioned it then, but I kind of want to go a little bit deeper into it because if you look at the scene when he puts that thing on, Tommen is visibly stressed out.
Oh yeah.
And when whoever it is comes to get him, he kind of needs a minute, like he's not ready yet. And then he finally, when the mountain comes, he doesn't know that it's the mountain at his door, but he's like takes a deep breath and he says, "I'm ready." And his nervousness, you could write it off to the fact that he's about to, in a way, condemn his mother to death. But an alternate view of that could be that he was going to confess that he was not a true-born Baratheon.
Or that as part of his mother's trial, that information was going to be brought up.
That could very well be, because after the sept blows up, we don't see Tommen with that chain on again. That actually comes off. So it made me wonder if that was going to be information that was going to come out in the trial.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we all assumed, well, it's been hinted at that people are aware of, or at least it seems to be a joke, that Cersei and Jaime have been together. And we've heard that quite a bit throughout the show. And then Bronn even has joked about it a couple times this season, actually. I think it was a lot of people presume that it would be Lancel would be the incest that was mentioned. But I have a feeling they were going to go even a step further because of the rumors and everything with Jaime and bring that up as well in her trial. And I think Tommen knew what was going to be brought up. Because it seemed as if he had confided a lot, and the High Sparrow confided a lot in Tommen as well, and probably told him what was going to be brought up in the trial, which is probably why he was so seeming so heavy-hearted heading into it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that really stood out to me when they put that on there and it was the lions and I was like, "Wait a minute. It
And
doesn't."
it's very much in the character of the show to set up a plot line and just literally dead end it.
Mhm.
Another thing about King's Landing that I was looking at is I'd noticed some people mention that it was kind of weird or overly convenient to have Lancel follow that kid down into the um, corridors and the lower levels of King's Landing beneath the Sept.
Okay.
And upon my second watch of that, I'm wondering if moving forward, Cersei is going to claim that Baelor is an inside job and blame Lancel for it.
I don't know. I mean at this point she can say whatever she wants. I mean, he's gone. So,
Well, well, the thing is that nobody likes Cersei. Nobody's going to accept her as the queen. She's only really even the queen of King's Landing.
right.
Like she has no legitimate power, and she, I think, would probably face a fairly violent uprising potentially, unless she finds a way to, pawn the murder off on somebody else. And I think that you could easily set up a situation where Lancel was meant to follow that kid down there, so that way people could spread the rumor, or even have the little birds spread the rumor that, well, Lancel was down, beneath the city prior to it exploding, so it must have been him doing it to, get back at whoever, and just kind of blame it on him.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I that's definitely a possibility. I think she is going to, and I mentioned this in our last episode as well, that she is going to, play none the wiser, or that it was just, didn't know that the stuff was there and it was a crazy random accident kind of a thing, or that it was the Mad King and it was the Targaryens and whatever. I still think she's going to have a lot of pushback with her being queen. Although, they quite literally suffered a huge blow to their city, and people are, going to be traumatized and in shock and whatever. And if you have somebody that steps up to the plate and is going to um, bring calm as much as, or fake calm to the city, then people may get behind her that way because she just decimated the court. And, all of the highborn citizens, I would assume, that lived in King's Landing were there because that's kind of the event of one of the many events of the year that's going to happen. That place was packed. So they're all wiped out, completely gone. So, until the time being, if somebody wants to challenge or whatever, they're just going to have to sit back and take it. And she's going to be the queen for a while until somebody else comes to claim it, I guess. Unless Gendry pops up.
Well, and that's the thing I'm wondering about Cersei, is that how long will this reign be, and is she going to become like um some sort of do some sort of like Inquisition type thing where she is now taking people that are in the faith of the Seven and then just start torturing them.
I don't know if there's anybody in the Faith of the Seven that's really left. Are you just talking about
Well,
regular random citizens?
yeah, I'm not talking about the hierarchy. I'm talking about more of the movement, the people, the like Occupy King's Landing crowd.
I mean, yeah, they're just, to her, they're all just sheep. I don't think they're going to matter to her. They've never mattered to her. I
That's
mean,
true.
because think back to when they were preparing for the purple wedding, and Marjorie was talking about taking food to the, oh, whatever food is left over, we're going to take it to the poor. And so she's like, yeah, no, you're going to feed the dogs. I'm not going to feed them. She doesn't care about people.
That's true, but then she has nobody to rule then.
I don't think she cares. She just wants to be sitting on that throne. She just wants to have the
And
crown on her head.
and you don't have to care about people to torture them and make them suffer.
Well, it's true.
A couple of cool things that I did see is that Michelle Clapton, who was the costume designer for Game of Thrones up until the end of last season, came back solely for the purpose of designing Cersei's outfit.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, and there's a really cool article in Vanity Fair if you are interested in reading about like costuming type stuff, where they talk about Michelle Clapton's design and how um, every stitch in her wardrobe is intentional.
Hmm.
It's designed to emulate some of Tywin's stuff. It has the lion epaulets to kind of show her connection to Jamie. It's kind of the last human connection she really has. If you look at her crown, the crown is a lion, but it's actually kind of a modified lion. So the mane of the lion is kind of emulating the Iron Throne.
Hmm.
Lots of really cool little details in there. And the fact that it's all black, kind of symbolizing that she is completely dead inside. She has no empathy left. She's Michelle Clapton says in this interview they did with her that there is no decoration to Cersei. Every detail is significant.
I love it. Yeah, so, so wonderfully designed. Really cool stuff.
All right, let me see. What other? Oh, a lot of similarities to Tommen's death. I guess not similarities, but at least maybe an interesting callback again to Tommen's death and how it ties into Bran falling out of the window in the very first episode. Cersei's last child dies falling out of the window the same way that Jaime attempted to kill Bran in the very first episode of the series.
You're connecting that?
I think it's an interesting callback to it. Well,
Superficially, maybe.
the things they do for love, though. Jaime pushed a kid out a window, and Cersei inadvertently forced her son to jump out of a window.
She didn't do that for love, though.
She kept him in the room because she loved him and didn't want him to go down to the Sept.
Mm. Well, and I guess you could also say too that he jumped for love because his love was dead. It was like a
Yeah,
Romeo and Juliet thing, and then he kills
poor
himself.
poor Tommen.
I know. He didn't deserve that. He was just a good kid, got caught up in a bunch of bad stuff. Bad people. It's not his fault.
Um, Another thing that I did notice, and this is getting away from King's Landing altogether, but I got to tell you, this whole like criticism people have of the show jumping around the timeline, I'm just so over it
Yeah, I am
because
too.
it would be one thing if the show didn't try to explain some of it, but it does. The show has explained the jumps in time. It did it by using scars on John's face. It did it by having Dario talk about how people were working hard to get the sails designed for when the fleet would leave. There's been all these different things. And the other part about it that's kind of funny to me is that George R. R. Martin has said this himself. He said it in the books, for God's sakes, that a chapter in the book can cover um, an hour, a week, a month, or even like 6 months in a character's journey. Not all the timelines are happening at the same time. It just
Right.
drives me crazy, this criticism. It's so preposterous.
Yeah.
And it's like the one thing people are holding on to have something that they can be snarky about, and it's just irritating as fuck, man.
Yeah, it's not cute or funny anymore. I'm kind of
No,
over it. Yeah.
no, it's just ridiculous. Like, did they want the Lord of the Rings to be like 8 hours long and just have like constant walking, 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 walking?
Yes. I would say yes.
Like, are we supposed to find out what happens on Arya's boat ride back from Bravos?
Yeah, she'll be on a boat for 4 episodes. Yeah.
The only show that ever did that like successfully was the very first season of 24, where like one of the characters is like, "Okay, I'm going to bed," and then 8 weeks later they come out of the bedroom and like, "I'm up."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm completely over that. It's not valid anymore. Stop it.
Yeah, it just irritates me. But I noticed it though that Dario mentions that there is passage of time that's happening.
Mhm. Yeah, there's very subtle things. I mean, although I will say that I was shocked to see Varys on the ship, but then that tells you that there was a lot of time that passed after, she let, Dario know that he wasn't going to be coming and all of his ships are there and Varys is off doing his thing and then it just tells you there are subtle little hints that tell you that there's a passage of time. And people, oh my gosh, have you read the theory that Varys is a mermaid?
No.
It's so stupid.
Sounds great.
Yeah, well, it's not called a mermaid. It's a mer something, not a merman, but a mer something. And it apparently it's something that's in the books. Because there's a house that actually has that as their sigil, is like a man mermaid thing, and I forgot what it's called in the books. But yeah, there's this whole theory that that's what Varys is, which I just think is silly.
Um, yeah, I mean the passage of time thing. I actually thought it was interesting to try to put together the timeline of the whole thing because when Varys leaves Tyrion, I'm wondering if that actually takes place after Cersei blows up the Sept of Baelor. Like we see Varys leave in episode 8,
Mm-hmm.
but we see Cersei blow up the Sept in episode 10. But I wonder if the Varys piece happens after the Cersei piece chronologically.
Well, it would have to because when he's in Dorne, that's after when we see him in Dorne, that's after the Sept has been blown up.
Right, meaning that Dany's departure for Westeros would be probably a couple of months
Yeah.
potentially into Cersei's rule
Mm-hmm.
in King's Landing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun to do with the timeline. I think it's kind of cool to put it together. There's all this talk about Dany leaving Dario behind for her to be able to move on and form some sort of marriage alliance.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that too. There's only one marriage alliance out there for her.
Yeah, there's really only one good prospect for her,
I
and
mean, it's not going to be Jaime Lannister.
no.
All the Freys are dead.
Yep.
All the Boltons are dead.
Yeah.
All the Baratheons are dead. No Tyrells around. No males left in Dorne.
Right.
There's really only one marriage alliance that could conceivably happen for her.
And it's her nephew.
Yes. Which is fully in line with Targaryen customs,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
And conveniently, Tyrion could broker that alliance pretty easily because he knows Jon.
That's true.
But I like the idea of King's Landing being squeezed from the north and squeezed from the south. Like, in just kind of looking at the aftermath of this, I have a lot of different questions. Like, who takes over the twins now?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to end up falling by the wayside because I don't think Jon is going to concern himself or be worried about anything that's happening south of Winterfell at all. He's going to be prepared with trying to arm together. Well, he just united a lot of the houses of the north, getting the rest of them on board, and maybe trying to spread the word about the threat that's coming, which he will probably get a lot of resistance to because there's a lot of people that don't even believe that the White Walkers even exist, that they're just fairy tales. They're going to have to see some kind of evidence of it. Um, he's going to be concerned with that. So I don't think he's going to be. I don't know if King's Landing is going to be getting a lot of push from the north, so to speak.
The thing about King's Landing that's gonna make it still threatening and powerful is that it does have the Lannister army, which is the largest army in Westeros. But I don't think they can fight a
Not
two
for
front
long.
war. They can't, right? They can't fend off Dany from the south while going back to fight the Starks up in the north, because Cersei wants Sansa's head on a spike. She said so last season, and actually Littlefinger promised to give it to her, which was kind of interesting. If she would in turn name him Warden of the North.
Well, the thing is, though, that Jaime is over the Lannister army. I don't think Jaime's going to be on board with what Cersei's doing at all. By that look that they were exchanging while she was sitting on that throne, he's not going to be on board with her. And I know that he said to Brienne that you can't make me, you know, you I'm not going to step away from my house. I'm not going to deviate, from my house, whatever the words were that he said. But I think this is going to be something that's going to make him do it.
Well, I actually think that Cersei has essentially usurped
Yeah.
Jaime for control of the Lannister army. I think they're hers, not his,
Mm.
because she's now higher in the food chain than Jaime.
Mm.
I think in one quick move, she's basically taken all the power.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't tell if this Cersei thing going into season 7 is going to be, you know, the walls closing in around her and it becoming this kind of two-person drama between her and Jaime,
Yeah.
or if it's going to be like Lannister forces meeting Dany, in the field of battle.
Well, they're
And part
gonna.
of me thinks that's not going to happen.
Hmm.
Part of me thinks that Cersei slowly crumbles from the inside, and Dany has no problems taking King's Landing.
Yeah, it's gonna be a pushover for her. Even if there is some resistance from the um Lannister army, she's got so much behind her, and with those dragons, it's gonna be nothing for her. Nothing.
I almost feel like, in a way, like from a story perspective, Dany needs to take a hit to level the playing field a little bit because at the current um, at the current levels of armament that she has, she's unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nobody that could give her a battle. Maybe except the White Walkers.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I have a feeling that that there's something that's going to happen that changes the focus.
And Euron Greyjoy is still out there too.
I just picture I just picture Euron Greyjoy, like he's still, plugging away and trying to get his ships going, and then all of a sudden his ships take off and they're sailing around, and he's gonna go to Meereen and he's gonna get Daenerys and he's gonna give her his big cock and, win her over, in his mind, and she's long gone. And he has no idea. And I can see him and his ships rolling up, and then there's Dario standing on the dock, just looking at all this come in. And Euron Greyjoy is like, "Where is everybody?" And they're like, "Yeah, she left like months ago." And him taking his little twig crown and like throwing it on the ground. Just like a
Yeah,
total
that
comedic moment. Like I don't know what's gonna happen with him, but
he's a wild card in this whole thing.
yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go with him. It's almost like they set him up for nothing. So I
I don't know
don't.
about that. I mean, this story has a way of kind of coming back around to things. I will say that there is a piece of his character. There's a certain item in the books that he carries that potentially could
That's
level the
true.
playing field a little bit, but
Yeah.
that hasn't been introduced yet. But that doesn't mean it won't be, because we have noticed that this show does like to get around to things on their own schedule.
Yeah, the show's kind of like Sansa in a way, where they've got an ace in their pocket and they don't let you know about it until the very last minute.
Another thing that I did pick up on in this episode is when Sam goes to the Citadel and he's
Hmm.
talking about um, how John is the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and how, according to the Citadel, it's Gior Mormont, and that Sam would have to talk to the Archmaester about those irregularities. Uh,
Yeah,
that
he's
is
dead.
that is a direct reference to a new character who I think we will see next season, the Archmaester of the Citadel, who does carry a fairly large uh, piece of information that we will, I think, find out next season.
Wasn't Maester Pycelle like one of the like main maesters?
Well, he was the Grand Maester.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, okay. Yeah, because
Y-
you're saying, yeah, I have to take up with him. I'm like, yeah, he's dead. So no, it's
Yeah.
somebody else. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
like Pycelle was more on the Jedi Council, but he wasn't like Yoda.
Okay.
The Archmaester would be like the Yoda.
So he was like Plo Koon.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I
That's
just
why we're called Nerd Flicks and Chill.
yeah, I just renewed my nerd card with that one. You're
But
welcome.
yeah, so there is. I mean, I did forget about that. That there is that little bit of lingering book knowledge out there about the Archmaester that I think could potentially be a game changer in this story.
Well, I'm excited to find out because I don't
Yeah.
know.
Let's
So
see.
that's the thing that I really find really that just it interests me so much is that there are people that oh it's completely on their own, they're completely off book. Well, no, they're not. There's still little nuggets of information they are still pulling and tying things in with the books, so they're not completely off on their own. There's still little nuggets
Well,
out there.
I think the show has done a great job of adapting the book material. But the other thing they've done a great job at doing, and it's something they don't get a lot of credit for, and they did it up until this past season, and it's not trying to blow past Martin's material. Like, they established certain things, but they didn't want to go beyond it because they wanted to give George a chance to get the book out.
Yeah.
And like, because I think about how, like, remember when in at the end of season 4, or at least towards the end of season 4, where Sansa gets to the Vale and she goes for that Elaine Stone dark hair,
Yeah,
the dark dress, that whole thing.
I loved
And
that look for her. It was so
well,
cool.
that's essentially where Sansa's book story ends.
Hmm.
But then when they had to get to writing the episodes, they didn't have book material to go off of, so they had to improvise. So they worked her into the Bolton storyline.
Right.
Or even with killing John at the end of season 5, like, they didn't push beyond it. They gave George a chance to get the book out.
Yeah.
But sometimes they have to do it. And when people do get
It's real.
upset
I mean,
about,
it's really George's fault.
yeah, that's what I was just going to say. When people get upset about, the show bypassing the books, well, that's Martin's fault. And he accepts that it's his own fault too.
Yeah. I do think it's going to be really interesting when the book comes out, whenever it comes out, because there are going to be things that are a little bit different, just because there are characters and situations or whatever that have been intermingled and everything within the show. I still would like to believe that the overall sweeping themes and occurrences are echoed throughout both, and that the end game will be similar in both, but how they get there might be a little bit different. So there are certain things that have happened on this show, like the whole Arya thing, for example. I think it will be interesting because we will get the dialogue from in their head, or their motivations, or their perceptions of things as to what's going on. Oh gosh, I'm especially really interested when the new book comes out to get John chapters, when he comes back.
Yeah.
When even, in the show, when Melisandre asks him, what did you see? And he says nothing. Was it really nothing? Was Or was it maybe something that he saw or experienced, but he's just saying nothing because maybe he doesn't understand what he saw? Or was there any kind of consciousness, or what was going on? Because his death scene in the books, it's you're in his head and you are getting a sense of what's happening. And so I'm really interested for the new book. When the new book comes out, I will probably read it and probably be lost for about 75% of it, because there will be people and places and things that I'm like, who the hell is this? Knowing that I have a hard time with names to begin with. Um, I might have some other book reading to do before then. Catch up on the other books.
Yeah, I one thing I would always tell people who have asked me, one of the recurring answers I give when people ask me if they should read the books, and I would say absolutely not, even to just be kind of like, the whole book smug thing, but I think you would get such an enjoyment out of the way Martin writes death. I know that sounds kind of grim and strange, but he writes death in a way that is really dark, but really, really just gripping.
Well, I've read the first book and into the second as well. I have a problem with his style of writing. And granted, there are passages that are really interesting. But overall, with his type of writing, it's kind of like with Anne Rice for me as well. A really difficult time in reading her writing because my mind wanders and I will my attention span is so short sometimes, and I will lose my interest very quickly. Like it has to move fast for me. And with Anne Rice and with George R. R. Martin, their overall story arcs, their overall the characters I find so interesting, the stories I find really interesting, but then into the minutia of their actual writing, I can't get into it. I have a hard time. It's a difficult read for me. When you have like 3 pages describing the dew on the leaf of a plant, I cannot stick with that. I can't. I think that's why I enjoyed the Harry Potter books so much, because they are written in a very fast pace, and those are really deep and intriguing and detailed stories. But then they don't give you minute detail on things that aren't so important. Yeah, I have a hard time reading his style. And I try to listen to the audiobooks, and I had a really hard time listening to the audiobooks. And no offense to the guy that narrates them,
Roy Dotrice.
but he makes a lot of the men in the books sound like pirates. And it removed me so much because all of the characters are talking like this. And it just it's like I'm getting ready for them to like start singing Pirates of the Caribbean or something. Um, it's it removed me because I think I was so into the show that it was hard for me to be on board with it. Um, but I think I'm gonna have to try and force myself because I really want to read the book, or I'll just have you read the book when it comes out, and then you can tell me all about it. I'll just do that.
Interesting side note about Roy Dotrice, who does the Game of Thrones audiobooks.
He's a pirate.
No, he
Oh,
was in he was the pyromancer in King's Landing in season 2,
I thought you were gonna tell
who
me he was a
shows
pirate.
Tyrion the wildfire, and he's
Oh, that's
there like
cool.
the kind of like pyromaniac looking guy at the Battle of Blackwater after the wildfire explodes. He has that look on his face.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I mean, I remember a guy being there, but I don't remember the look on his face. But that's really cool that they gave him a little part on the show. That's kind of awesome. I like that.
But I do get the vibe that that the sixth book, The Winds of Winter, will kind of lead us to the same place where the show has gotten us to. If you look at the um, names of the different books, I
Hmm.
mean they're not just titles. They're actually kind of they're more like philosophical statements about what's happening.
Yeah.
And the winds of winter implies change.
So do you think the book will take us to or end like how this season did, where it takes us to Dany leaving for Westeros?
Maybe. I probably. I think it'll get us. I mean, she might, in the books, she might actually land in Westeros. I assume what'll happen is that she'll probably land and establish some sort of like land base. Like, I don't see episode 1 of season 7 starting with Daenerys and her fleet and her dragons rolling into Blackwater Bay and attacking King's Landing. Like, I think they'll start probably in Dorne and move up from there.
Oh yeah, because I mean, after a journey like that, especially when you have um, a bunch of people like the Dothraki that aren't accustomed to being at sea for any period of time, they're going to need some time to kind of recharge and come up with a game plan. And because they're not going to have communication in between the ships, they're not going to be able to sit there and talk about stuff. So they're going to have to disembark and have a little war council meeting and a game plan and set up stuff. So, I mean, where that's going to happen, yeah, probably Dorne would make the most sense. That would be their kind of base camp to get started. Yeah. Yeah, I don't foresee it happening where she's all of a sudden attacking.
Yeah, I've been kind of recollecting on season 6 and kind of thinking about where we started versus where we ended. Um, but I think that season 6 has been, in my opinion, the most satisfying of all the seasons.
Yeah.
Um, you could say that it meandered there in kind of the second act, if you will, or at least in the kind of between the second and third act. But I actually thought overall this is my favorite season of the show.
I would agree. The show, it was definitely this season bookended itself nicely on many storylines. How you mentioned before, it made a lot of really good callbacks to other ones. It tied up a lot of things. And it set up a lot of things to come. I think that not only I think you in the last I think in our last podcast you even mentioned or you said that it was like the show grew up,
Yeah.
and I really think that's true, and it really feels that way. And part of me is thinks it's a shame that we only have two very short seasons left. But at the same time, I think it's good because I would hate for it to continue going and it to not be so exciting. So it's like it's good, you want it to leave when it's on a high note, when it's going really well, but I don't know necessarily where we're going to be taken and how it's going to end, or at what point it's going to end. Is it going to end in the same spot or in the same thing that the books would end? Or is there going to be some kind of a satisfying ending for the show, but yet the books are going to continue beyond that? I mean, who knows? I mean, we've been waiting this long for the next book to come out. After this book comes out, goodness only knows when the next one after that will come out. So I think it's going to be a long time before people are able to actually read the conclusion of all of these stories.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the book does come out between season 6 and season 7, how far ahead the book goes. Now we're in like a race.
Well, it seemed like we were in a race. Um, what was it, season 5 or this last season 6? It was like a race to see what was going to come out first. Season 6, and the book. Because people were hoping that the book was going to come out before the season started. And
Yeah. The
I
only
think
thing
people
about
I think people's heads will explode if the book does not come out by the time season 7 rolls around.
yeah, the only thing about season 7 that that I am not the first bit of season 7 news that we got is news that I did not really like. And that news is that they have picked their directors for season 7,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Miguel Sapochnik is not in there.
Yeah, that kind of shocked me. Um I'm hoping, much to the detriment of the show, but I'm hoping that it's because he just landed some kind of awesome gig or something and that he's not available for it and it's huge. I hope for his sake because I think now he's probably one of my favorite directors. I mean, at least for television. So I would love to see what he would do with a feature film because as far as I know, he hasn't done any feature film anything.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So I would really like to see what he would be able to do with that. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's because of something big for him.
Yeah, the directors for season 7 were announced, and they are Alan Taylor, who um, you would remember Alan Taylor because he directed the beheading of Ned Stark.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, so he's done a couple of episodes of Game of Thrones before. Uh, Jeremy Pottis was coming back. He did Jon Snow's resurrection episode this season.
That was good.
Mark Mylod, he's back. I'm sure that's the one who a lot of Game of Thrones fans are not thrilled to see back in the mix because he did direct The Broken Man and No One, which were, I think, two of people's least favorite episodes of the season. At least that's what the consensus seems to be.
Mm-hmm.
And here's kind of the interesting one is Matt Shakman.
Yeah, that's a new name for Game of Thrones.
He is coming over from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh,
So that was an
that's an
interesting,
interesting choice.
yeah.
Huh.
And of course, that does the four names that you see in there does seem to indicate that we will have a shorter season. But I will say that nothing officially has come out from HBO about that.
Oh, I thought it was official that it was only 8 episodes.
The network itself still isn't commenting, which means that
Oh,
probably the Double D's want to do 7 or 8, but HBO wants 10 because it's better for business.
yeah.
So they're not confirming any of that yet.
Maybe that's why they haven't said anything about Miguel Sapochnik at all. Maybe he's their ace in the pocket. And if they give in and say, okay, well, we'll do 10 episodes. Oh, look, he's going to be the director for those too. We already got it done. He's going to
Well,
come through like the Knights of the Vale.
it's funny because Alan Taylor, who is coming back for season 7, he is one of the directors who really helped kind of launch the show in terms of its aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So he was one of the people on the ground floor that helped establish it.
Yeah, but I
But I
think,
think Sapochnik has taken it to a new level,
yeah,
and I won't be thrilled if season 7 episode 1 looks like season 5 episode 4.
right.
I feel like we've come a long way in the visual storytelling of the show to where it's been elevated,
Yeah.
and you have to keep that trajectory going higher and higher and higher. That's why I'm not thrilled to see Mark Mylod's name on here either.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because, the bar definitely has been set very high with this last season. The last 2 episodes alone, but with this last season as a whole, that yeah, I think it would really do the show a disservice if it went back. But I'm hoping that they've been paying attention and they will keep that ball rolling and not be set in their ways with things. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
I think another great thing about season 6 is um, some of the surprises that we got, and the death of Hodor being one of them. I thought that was so masterfully done, and the whole
Yeah.
White Walker sequence that leads up to it. I mean, that was a great surprise. Lyanna Mormont, maybe the newcomer of the season.
Oh yeah, definitely. She's definitely one of the high points, one of the standouts of the entire season. She's a scene stealer.
She absolutely is. There's some great articles um, that have come out where you can hear interviews with Sophie Turner and Kit Harington where they talk about this little girl. I think her
Hmm.
name's like Bella
Ramsey.
Ramsey.
Hmm.
Yeah. And they talk about how prepared she was and how good she was
This is her
on
first
set.
gig. This is her first gig. She's never done any acting before, ever.
I'm
And
telling you though, next year she'll be 6 feet tall. She'll be like Bran.
right, like Sweet Robin. She'll be like that. Come on, like who's that? Um, no, but I actually read an interview with her, and she's like, I don't know how old she is, 10 or something. She's 10 going on like 40. She's more well spoken than I am, and I'm not very well spoken at all. So she's very mature for her age, even in the
Yeah,
written form.
yeah. I think she was really really great. I did not expect to like Lyanna Mormont as much as I did. All right, so let's talk a little bit about season 7.
Okay.
We have touched on kind of what we think might happen, but let's talk about what stories you'd like to see play out in the North. What do you think's going to happen in the North?
Well, I'm guessing Mira's going to be dragging Bran to the wall. I want to see what happens with that. Is the wall going to come down because Bran is there? Is the mark on his arm? I want to know with the mark on his arm. Is it more than just a GPS for the White Walkers or for the Night's King? I want to see I want to see them get to the wall. They're close, but she's going to have to drag him, or somebody from the Night's Watch is going to happen by and see them, which I'm guessing that might be more probable because she doesn't have her little sled for him anymore. So I think somebody will happen by, or I don't know if Benjen can send word. I don't know how close he can get to the wall before he gets zapped or whatever is supposed to happen.
Well, I was people were talking about how he left Bran really far from the wall.
They're not really far.
They're not that far, and if you
No.
look like Benjen, you're gonna have like one of the dudes from the Night's Watch trying to set your ass on fire.
Yeah.
Like you look like a White Walker. You might be like half white, but to them, you are the undead. So it made sense. And Benjen did introduce the idea of the wall falling when he said, "As long as it stands, the dead cannot pass." The inverse of that implies they can pass if the wall's not standing. So
Right.
the wall will come down. But what about Jon? Like I have no idea what Jon's story is going to be.
He's going to be rallying the people from the north together and spreading the word about the White Walkers and trying to notify people south of Winterfell as much as he can about this and getting everybody prepared and trying to actually work through and execute a plan because it's coming. Winter is here. The White Walkers are coming. We
See,
need to be ready.
I think that's a logical thought, but that doesn't sound like very much of a story to me. Because
Well,
I think he's already rallied the North. Like I don't know what his arc is for next season, unless it's actually like maybe some sort of chess game with like him and Littlefinger that's going down, or is he gonna just be thrust right into this Cersei Danny conflict that's gonna be coming about? if they are going to only do 7 episodes or whatever they say it's going to be, there's not much time to dilly dally. They're going to have to get pieces moving. So, I mean, is that really what's going to, like, is Jon like right in the thick of it right away?
I would guess so. I mean, because I was actually surprised that we didn't see anything with the White Walkers in the last, at least the last episode. I thought for certain we would get some kind of a glimpse that we would see their army or their, they're at a point where they can see the wall or they see Bran or, whatever. I mean, Bran is there and that's basically a homing beacon for the Night's King. So I'm assuming the Night's King is going to be on his way. And I'm still surprised that we didn't see that at all in episode 10. So, um, I'm guessing something's going to be happening at the wall, whether the wall starts to come down or crumble. And I mean, the closest thing for them is Winterfell. I mean, I guess Jon's going to be worrying about that. Whatever's happening, that threat that's happening north of him is probably going to happen pretty soon then.
I felt like season 6 was a little bit easier to predict because there was some heavy foreshadowing in season 5. But going into season 7, I'm not sure what to expect at all. Like, I really have no idea. I mean, does the first episode involve, just right off the bat, Dany attacking King's Landing? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. Where do you think?
But it can't just be everybody sitting around planning to do shit. So what? Dany's planning her invasion. Jon's planning foreign invasion. Cersei's just being crazy. It's weird to me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where when season 5 dropped off, I mean, that was in essence that was where the books dropped off. So, when was the last book came out?
Like 2011, I think.
So 2011. So people have had all this time to speculate and to guess as, Jon's fate. Was he going to be coming back and, whatever. And there were fan theories for the longest time. Now that we've gotten those answers, at least show wise, this is a shorter amount of time. People don't have as much time to speculate. So a lot of those speculations aren't. It almost seemed to me that a lot of the speculation coming out of season 5 or, coming out of the last book were a pretty done deal. I mean, because when we're heading into season 6, people kind of suspected already what was going to happen because they'd been thinking about it for years. And there had been so many theories and so many different ins and outs that people have worked through that, they all kind of led to the same paths. But now that we've gotten beyond those theories, and a lot of those theories have come to fruition, yeah, now we're really riding free. We're really in the dark, not knowing where on earth we're going to go. So I think it's really exciting, and I can't wait for this off season to see what kind of theories and things kind of bloom and spark because of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you look at season 5, there's the talk about Melisandre walking on the battlements of Winterfell, seeing the Bolton banners fall. You have Cersei saying that she'll burn cities to the ground, and so there's all this foreshadowing. I'll be interested to rewatch season 6 to try to pick out some potential foreshadowing. And I think right now I've only got a couple of different things. Benjen talking about the wall would be one of them. Um, maybe a marriage alliance between Dany and Jon. But those are really it. Like, that's all I can really come up with.
Well, the Brotherhood without banners were talking about going north.
Yeah.
So that was talk beyond the
And
season.
Melisandre's going south.
Right.
But, like, I don't know what direction Arya goes. I was actually thinking that she would head north, but now I'm starting to think she's going to head south.
King's Landing way.
Yeah. I think that she'll be like, she'll hear that the Starks have retaken Winterfell, but instead of going home, she'll also hear that Cersei has taken the Iron Throne, and
Yeah.
she'll want to go finish her business. I actually have kind of a crazy theory. you ready for this?
Yep.
It's kind of exciting.
Okay. I'm gonna brace myself.
Arya goes south
Whoa.
to try to assassinate Cersei, right?
Yeah.
The Brotherhood without banners goes north because they're going to try to fight off the impending threat of the White Walkers.
Okay.
Arya is going to try to kill Cersei, but she's going to fuck up and she's going to end up getting herself captured. And Cersei is going to hold a public trial of Arya Stark as a way to kind of stick it to the
The
usurpers in the
man.
north or the traitors in the north. So she's going to stick it to the White Wolf. She's going to be like, yeah, fuck you, dude. I got your sister down here. She's going to publicly stand trial. But then
Oh.
Arya's going to ask for a trial by combat. Cersei will pick the mountain. Arya will select the Hound. Because the Hound will make his way down when he hears word of Arya's capture to attempt to rescue her. And the way he'll do it will be to fight his brother in the Clegane Bowl at the trial of Arya Stark. Book it.
So Arya doesn't know anything about the Hound. She doesn't know that he's still alive.
No,
So,
she would find out at her trial. She would see him in the crowd.
oh, because I was gonna say, how does it get to the point where she chooses him if she doesn't know anything about him? That doesn't make any sense.
Can totally
So,
happen. Can
hmm.
totally happen. It'll happen quickly too. It'll be like something will happen where you won't even know. You'll be like, oh shit, it's Clegane Bowl time. Telling you. Book it right now, folks.
That's right.
Maybe it's just wish fulfillment. That would be fine though.
Yeah.
But I do think Arya will go south.
Okay.
I think she will try to cross Cersei off of her list. A lot of people seem to think that it is going to be Jaime who's going to kill Cersei.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that. But at the same time, like, I think it would be cooler to see it done another way. Let's see. And then for Dany's still the one that I think is challenging. Just because she has this army and I just don't know what her plan is. Dario made it sound like they were going to attack right away,
Yeah.
but I just doubt it.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's going to be really hard to predict season 7. But I'm going to be, like I said, interested in going back, looking at some of the season 6 stuff to see what foreshadowing might be there.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that there's stuff that's in there that going back and looking at it with different eyes are going to make it stand out differently.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all I have about season 7. I don't have much until we start to get maybe a little bit of news trickling in here and there. The cool thing about Game of Thrones is they do space out some of their promotional stuff. They are doing a Comic Con panel this year. Miguel Sapochnik is going to be on it. So is Ramsay Bolton and Hodor and Sansa and a couple other characters. I think Sam is going to be there as well.
Oh,
Double D's are going to be there.
I
So
would
that'll be kind of cool.
I would love to be there for that. That would be so cool. Um, yeah, there's a couple things in this last season that we didn't see again. We didn't see the White Walkers again. We didn't see Brienne and Pod, as far as we know. They're gonna meet up with Gendry on a river
Yeah,
somewhere while they're rowing.
rowing,
Um, I
strengthening their back muscles.
that's right. I assume they're on their way back up to Winterfell. I would love to have Brienne and Jaime meet up again somehow. I would love to see a weird triangle between Jaime, Brienne, and Tormund.
Of course. I want to see Tormund have like his own house. Like fucking like House Giantsbane.
Yeah,
Because
that'd
I
be
mean,
awesome.
like
1-1 is the sigil.
They could always do like they could always give them the Dreadfort.
It's true.
The Boltons don't need it anymore.
Yep.
They got some open houses there.
Do it.
I think that'd be kind of neat.
That would be neat.
Any other thoughts on season 7 as we go into it?
No, we didn't get any teasers or anything for season 6 until like what, January or February?
Well, actually, so they did something really, really interesting this time around. The first bits of like the first 40-second teaser that had some new dialogue in it was in November. And I think about a week later, they put out the first poster from season 6.
Yeah.
And then the first trailer came very late.
Right.
But I really hope they do that IMAX thing. I think that would be awesome.
I agree. I would be there. I would get my tickets for that. But yeah, it's just, oh my gosh. Unless we have random set reports and stuff, we're not going to have any new Game of Thrones stuff until a couple months from now, at least.
Yeah, we'll at least get some news from their Comic-Con panel. That'll be at least a little bit of something, but we'll make sure we touch on that stuff as we move forward in some future episodes. All right. So I think that's about it, huh?
I think so.
All right, everybody. You've heard what we think, but as always, we want to hear what you think. So hit us up on the Twitter at NerdFlixChill and on Facebook under the same name. We appreciate hearing all of your feedback, for those of you who have been kind enough to submit some. Additionally, big thank you to all of our users around the world who are listening to us. It's always cool to see where our listeners are. Thank you guys so much for listening to us. We hope you stick with us as we go into our Game of Thrones off-season, which is going to have a lot of cool stuff. We have some film reviews coming up. We'll do some other TV shows that we'll be interested in talking about. Preacher, we mentioned earlier, definite thing that we're going to want to talk about eventually. We also have some random topics that are going to be fun, so we want to get a lot of feedback on those too. But be on the lookout for more stuff from Nerd Flicks and Chill.